G'day and welcome to another episode of A Legal Teacher Reads the News. Going to look at an issue today that is really helpful for both Year 11 and 12. And it kind of looks at an issue that kind of is always in the news and we don't think about it from this point of view. What I'm talking about is social media and the discussion of it as a new technology. Now, some people might be sitting there thinking, oh, what are you talking about? We always talk about that. Good for you. But what I'm talking about is looking at it from a point of view of individual and the law, in particular, the contemporary issue of the individual and technology, and also, most importantly, the role of law reform. So it's helpful for both this concept of law reform, rights of an individual. I'll show you what I'm talking about. And obviously, you can do it here as well in law reform in action, a contemporary law reform issue. So it's actually really helpful for teachers who are wanting to combine a whole bunch of syllabus points into an issue. So there's two things I'm going to talk about here. The first of all is technology really pushing the boundaries of what's acceptable in society. Now, this is helpful not just for Year 11, but also helpful for, once we get to HSC, consumers. Because you see a whole bunch of ideas of, for example, the role of the law in encouraging cooperation and conflict for consumers, compliance and non-compliance, a reflection of changing values and ethical standards, and law reform in recognising the rights. A whole bunch of stuff here, all right? And I'll show you what I mean. First of all, Amazon has gone too far as it bids to resurrect the dead. This is by James Titcomb. It's talking about a new thing that Amazon put out. This is at the end of June 2022. And it's honestly, it's pretty freaky when you read about it. Let's have a look. Not content with chasing the elixir for eternal youth, Silicon Valley is now trying to resurrect the dead. Last week, Amazon executive Rohit Prasad showed off a demo of the company's Alexa assistant imitating the voice of a dead grandmother. After a young boy asked his speaker, "Alexa, can Grandma finish reading me The Wizard of Oz?" Lady, the device produced a lifelike synthesis, reading the book in a reassuringly elderly tone. Overworked parents might see the feature as a genius study hack. Amazon pitched it as a way to remember lost ones. While AI can't eliminate that pain of loss, it can definitely make the memories last, Prasad said. I mean, just straight up, what I'm thinking is that's not a memory. If she didn't read Wizard of Oz to you, you're creating something new. Like most of the tech industry's inventions, the feature was announced with a breezy optimism. Prasad boasted that the grandmother's voice could be replicated with less than a minute of audio, an achievement that would have been impossible a few years ago. Here's this idea of kind of technology just galloping ahead of the law and law reform. The company describes it as exploratory research, and it's unclear when or if the technology will make it to the public. Nor did Amazon say what restrictions it planned to place on the system. Will relatives have to give their consent for their voice to be replicated before they pass away, for example? Will Amazon demand proof that somebody has died? Or will we be able to create imitations of our own voice, outsourcing bedtime reading to digital twins? Will Amazon attempt to impersonate personalities as well as simply voices, letting us have conversations with deceased relatives? We could call it a good idea for Black Mirror had it not already been the plot of one episode years ago. Whatever the answers to these questions, it's unlikely to change the overwhelming reaction to Amazon's announcement, which was that it was downright creepy and crossed a line that society is unprepared for. But let's try to give the idea a fair hearing. We already use earlier technologies, photo albums, home videos, and written letters to remember lost loved ones that would have otherwise existed only in memories. Before they became common, would we have feared they would have made it harder to move on? Previous moral concerns about technologies that imitate humans have outweighed their real impact. In 2018, Google unveiled its update to its AI assistant that would be able to make phone calls on a person's behalf to book appointments at restaurants and hairdressers. Predictions soon emerged of a two-tier system in which wealthy consumers outsource their inconvenient interactions with the proletariat to machines. No such thing has happened. Deepfakes, AI-generated videos that appear to show public figures saying and doing things they have never done, were predicted to wreak havoc on society and threaten democracy as they blur the lines of what is real. At least for now, the panic appears greatly exaggerated. Amazon could also reasonably argue that the genie is out of the bottle. There is no shortage of synthetic voice tools available online, and it will not be long before they can do what Alexa's researchers are now capable of. Those who have lost loved ones have already used widely available software to create digital impersonations of the deceased, which can be spoken to through chatbots. Reception is mixed. Some have found the experience therapeutic, a way to come to terms with grief created by an often unexpected death. Others fear that communicating with a departed soul could prove addictive and lead someone to detach themselves from real life. The science on this is best left to psychiatrists, but it is reasonable to ask whether we want Amazon, a company whose primary objective is to sell us more toilet paper and phone chargers, to be at the forefront of developing this technology. Do we want necromancy to be a perk that is only available to Prime members? Amazon's track record on ethics when it comes to Alexa is questionable. Too often, rapid advances have trumped thoughtful progress. In 2019, it emerged that armies of human workers were listening to conversations with the smart assistant, forcing the company into a series of privacy changes. The assistant has given people offensive or dangerous advice by erroneously pulling snippets of unverified information from the web in an attempt to improve its knowledge base. In one stint-corrected case, it told a 10-year-old girl to touch a live plug with a penny. Summoning the dead seems like a similar case of seeing if something can be done before asking whether it should. At the very least, Amazon could have promised to answer some of the inevitable concerns about resurrecting grandma before any public launch. As things stand, it simply looks like another case of Silicon Valley hubris. Okay, so what are we talking about here? For Year 12, obviously, you can talk about this and a whole bunch of other examples for consumers, the dangers for consumers, the legal responses and the non-legal responses about achieving justice when it goes wrong. So there's a whole bunch of stuff you can look at there. For the Year 11s, I think it's actually a really helpful case study, because what you can do is you can go through and find all these examples that, that James is talking about here. Okay, you can find the keynote addresses, you can look at them, and I think it's a really interesting and engaging way to talk to students about this idea of law reform and this idea of engaging in kind of the law in practice. So this idea of the development of law reform as a reflection of society and the importance of the rule of law, the responsiveness of the legal system in dealing with issues. Okay, so thinking through and coming up with a couple of case studies like this, where you can have perhaps a debate-based experience where students watch this, read the article, and then have a debate. What should happen? How should the law respond to this? How can they actually kind of keep this in check? How do they respond in a way that is both inclusive in thinking through and what are some of the good things that are coming out of it, as well as some of the things that are bad? And so I think it's a really helpful example at social media and the kind of Silicon Valley companies that are racing through and trying to come up with new technologies. And as James says, this question at the end of they're doing it, seeing as if something can be done before asking whether it should. Okay, so that's a really nice kind of theme that can happen again and again as you go through and think through the individual and technology, impacts of technology on the individual, legal implications of it, difficulties with enforcing rights, future directions, all right, and this whole idea of, well, how does emerging technological issues interplay with law reform and the difficulties of enforcing rights when these are new technologies that are happening as we speak. So combining that with a contemporary law reform issue, so that's the new technology and all the conditions that give rise to it, agencies of reform, how effective is the law reform actually happening in just outcomes for this issue. All right, it combines a whole bunch, and I think it's a really engaging thing for students to talk about and debate with each other and think through the legal implications as it happens. Thanks for watching.